Welcome everyone if you're just joining us, and we're going to be talking about the second part of our task-based learning webinar. Okay, Kathy's going to be, just as the first one, she's going to be primarily presenting it. Okay. So I'll hand over to her. Oh, actually I won't. I'll take this just for a moment. Just to let you know, if you are signed up for this webinar only, that is, you're not in our full training course, we will send you a certificate of participation in the next few days and also a webinar handout. If you don't receive us, email us at formazione@mlaworld.com. However, if you are in our last webinar and you're hoping to be selected for the observation webinar and the actual observations in the following week. That is, if you've signed up for the complete training course, we won't send you a certificate of participation after each webinar. We're going to send you one at the end of the course. So wait for that. If you have any problems, you can always email me at formazione@mlaworld.com. Remember, however, that all the information on these slides, last week's slides, this week's slides, come out in a handout. So you can also email me there if you need to get that too. So there's a lot of information on there, plus some extra information for you. Okay. Anyway, with that, I'll hand over to Kathy.
Hello, lovely. Thank you, Josh. We've got quite a few questions about that last week, so I hope that's clear for everyone. Do let us know. We're going to begin the session today with a little recap of something that we went over last lesson. So I have these anagrams here, and they talk about the roles of both the student and the teacher in the classroom. So first, kind of surprising you with a little quiz here. We have this race, and this kind of represents the role of the student in the classroom. Who can remember what the different letters stand for?
Write in the chat if you know. When you have race car, Kathy, is race car, is that the same first ones?
That's for the teacher. That's the role of the teacher. But let's begin. Let's begin with the role of the student. And don't worry, I won't get you to get involved. That would be pretty unfair, as you weren't here last week, Josh.
Thank God for that. Victoria missed last week's too, so don't worry, Victoria. We do put these up on the YouTube page, so you will be able to view it if you missed it last week. Okay.
Yeah, it was a session that kind of introduced task-based learning, and we spoke a lot about different tasks and also the role of the student and the role of the teacher. And so we're just doing a little recap of that.
Well, Anna seems to have got them all. I don't know if they're all correct, but a lot of people have put reflection or responsible. Okay. Anna's put reflection, authenticity, collaboration, and engagement.
Exactly. Well done.
Okay,
well done.
same with Christina as well. Okay.
Great. And reflection is right up there at the top. And that's one of the main things that we're trying to foster in our students in the task-based learning lessons, definitely. Okay, cool. Let's move on. This one's a little bit longer. It talks about the role of the teacher in a task-based learning lesson.
Are these different RACEs or the same ones?
Some of the same, some are a little bit different.
Okay.
The first one, well, one of the R's is again reflection or reflect, because as I said before, it's such a big part of task-based learning, making our students a bit more autonomous and reflecting on their learning path. What about the rest of the letters there? What do they stand for?
Okay, we've got a few here. Let me see, go through them. Engagement, resource analyzing, response, analyze, resource analyze, challenge, engage, clarity, adapt, reflect. Sorry, they're going through so many responses. Okay.
That's definitely, yeah, we listed them all off there. Response, I think you could definitely bring that in. It's not one that we had here, but definitely we are responding to the emergent language of the students and responding to the way they want to go about doing the tasks. So I think that's a nice one there as well. Excellent. Okay, so what are we doing today? This session, we are really focusing on labeling the three stages of a TBL lesson because task-based learning lessons are very conveniently divided into three stages. And so we're going to focus on those and what we do in each of the stages, what the students do in each of the stages. Facilitating the successful completion of a task, because by now you'll know that so much of the learning happens during the students doing the task and in collaborating and communicating with each other. So how can we facilitate them in doing that successfully as teachers? And also directing students in correcting their own mistakes and reflecting upon their learning paths. So helping them take a bit more ownership of their current learning and also the direction that they want to go in with their learning of the language. And so throughout this session today, we're going to be looking at one task in particular and kind of using it as an example. And we looked really briefly at this task last session, but we're going to go through it in a lot more detail today. So what we have here is a task in which the students have to organize an event. The event that they are organizing is a picnic, and we have made some suggestions about how they might go about organizing that event. So making a list of the food, the drinks, the games they might play at this event, which is a picnic. So this is a task that comes from one of the MLA task time books that we've created. It is a task for an A1 level. So we're talking about really, really elementary level students, and just think about that as we go through the session today and what that means. What else can I tell you?
Can I ask, is this one for our students online, or is it one of the ones we do for students in our centres?
This is one of the ones that we use in our centres throughout the summer and Easter.
In case you don't know, we do the same sort of things online as we do in presence, but students online obviously are connecting remotely. But if you're in one of our courses, you may be observing some of these students, but they use the same sort of methods. And even in our centres, we use the digital copy, so the students generally use computers or tablets in our centres. So the books look the same. We don't use hard paper books anymore.
Great. So let's have a little think about how we can break down a task-based learning lesson. And so as I said before, it's made up of three stages. We have the pre-task stage, the task stage, which of course takes up most of the lesson, where the students are working together. And then we have the post-task stage, which is often also called the language focus stage. And we're going to go ahead now and talk about these three stages in a little bit more detail. So we have the pre-task stage, and here we have this little image in the top right-hand corner there, and this kind of the red icon represents the teacher, and the yellow icons, the students. And so what we're seeing here is that actually this pre-task stage is the one time where the lesson is quite teacher-centered, and the teacher does most of the talking, and the students are responding to the teacher. Whereas moving throughout the class, moving throughout the lesson, that changes a
Key
lot.
role for the students there is to dodge the arrows that are shot. So yeah, I think we're sort of looking at the teacher speaking and the students listening, I guess, what this sort of saying, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Although you always sounds like much more fun.
Sometimes you feel like you should have brought a bow and arrow in class. Although second
Okay.
stage might be a bit dangerous.
Yeah, we might need it there. We might need it there. So what are we doing in this pre-task stage? We're engaging students in the task, getting them excited about doing it and helping them see the kind of the authenticity behind the task. We are being a resource and also modeling the production. So this means we're showing them what we expect them to do whilst they are doing the task together. Of course, very importantly, in this pre-task stage, we have to give them very, very clear instructions on how to do the task. Otherwise, they get into the groups and they get excited and they might end up doing something completely different. And we are also importantly challenging the students to go beyond what is easy, and we'll show you what that looks like now. So going back to the lesson, the task that we looked at before, which was organizing this event, which is a picnic. What does that look like? Well, we engage the students when we activate schemata through perhaps a vocabulary game or a model production. So what do we mean by this? We mean that we're helping them to bring their prior knowledge to the class. And we might do this through asking them questions like, what was the last picnic you went to? Or what events do you like organizing with your friends? Or what do you take to a picnic with your friends? We could do this through a vocabulary game by asking them to write lists of food or drinks. Categories game is a great one to play to get them to write lists of vocabulary, for example.
I think what's important here too, remember that you're dealing with a group of students. So what one student might know is not necessarily what another student knows. So, getting vocabulary and sharing it with the class means that you're all bringing them up to, the level of hopefully the highest one in the class, at least with vocabulary,
Yeah, definitely. We might model the production by giving them an example, and that example could be something like you're all invited to my picnic in Hyde Park at 2 p.m. on Saturday. It's in Hyde Park, so remember to bring a jumper or a cardigan. We'll be eating lots of cheese sandwiches, bowls of fruit. There'll be cartons of orange juice and bottles of water. And this is how we give them a model. We're showing them how to present or invite people to come to an event that they've organized. Once we have activated this schemata or engaged the students in the task, we have to give instructions and check everyone is very clear on what they have to do before we put them in their groups and they begin the task. Often we call these ICQs, so they're instruction checking questions. We describe what they have to do in the task, and then we check that they have understood our instructions. So an instruction could be, are you working together to organize the event, or are you working alone?
From
Of
when
course,
I've
they're working.
observed from when I've observed teachers, it's often a good way to see a teacher who's really thinking about it, to see their ICQs, because it's very easy to ask students, do you understand the task? Okay? Do you know what you have to do? And only a very bold student will say no. Okay? But if you give them a choice, one thing that's correct and one thing that's not correct, are you working together or are you working separately? Are you, in that case, they don't have an obvious answer. Okay? And
Yeah,
you can really tell which ones understand, or
yeah.
if your
Are you
instructions.
making a list of food or a list of places to have the picnic? Exactly. What other type of ICQs can you guys think of? that would be useful to check for students?
Yeah, put them in the chat if you've got any other ICQs.
And finally, we want to challenge the students. So it's very easy to complete this task in a very, very simple way. They could say Hyde Park, cheese sandwiches, orange juice, tennis. Essentially, they have completed the task, but we really want to challenge them. And we can do this by reminding them of the authenticity of the task. So, do you organize events with your friends? Where do you go? How do you organize those events? And um, how do you persuade your friends to come to this event with you?
Elena noted that you could ask student to repeat instruction to the class.
Yeah,
So
I
be
like that. That's a
careful
great
a bit
idea.
with that because repeating doesn't necessarily mean you understand it, but I think as long as you can see that they've actually they're repeating it in a way maybe that's different, not the exact same words that the teacher used.
One of the teachers that we have that works online for us in our Get Ready courses was telling me yesterday that now his students are so used to doing these tasks with him every week that he models the task and then he asks them, okay, what do you think you need to do?
Mhm.
And I don't think you could do this with our very low level students at this A1, A2 level, but I think that's a great way to challenge them from kind of B1 upwards, and it makes sure they really listen to your model and they're giving you the instructions. And I thought that was fantastic.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you can always say, so, what's the first thing that you have to do? What's the second? And then what do you do? These sort of open questions or a choice question rather than just, do you understand? You know, are you okay? Are you ready? Things like that,
Mhm,
where, you know, then you're going to find some of the students don't understand.
mhm, mhm.
If
Okay,
not,
so now we've set up the students to do the task. We can jump straight into the task stage. And here you can see a little red icon, the teacher who's lost her bow and arrows, or lost his bow and arrows. It's taking a
that's the
step
ninja
back.
thing. What do they call it? Throwing,
the
throwing
the
darts.
teacher takes a step back in this task stage and becomes very much just the observer, and we're really handing over to the students. And as you can see here, all the students are communicating with each other during this part of the task. But what is the teacher doing? The teacher is there to monitor, to observe, to listen, and analyze their emergent language. So what type of language are they using to do this task? The teacher is also there is available in order to be a resource. So a student might have a question about how to say something, how to explain something. And so we're there on hand to help them when they ask. We have to be there and available to adapt to their direction. So, we give them some suggestions of making lists about what they're going to take, what they recommend people bring, who they're going to invite. But perhaps a group might decide to create an invitation for the picnic. And isn't that great? And then they're working together to create the invitation. And that's how they've chosen to do the task. And so here we're adapting to the type of language that they want to use. And of course, the students are collaborating together in order to succeed in doing the task.
This
So what does that look
interactive
like?
task, so the interaction way there could also be in pairs, couldn't it? Doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily need to be in one big group. Often we're going to, in fact, if you're going to observe our lessons, you often see the students being put in pairs. And so it's sort of an interaction between two students, another two students. Okay? I think the key thing there is particularly to sort of for the teacher to be not afraid to step back. Okay? And you know, give the speaking over to the students. I think there's often with inexperienced teachers they get used to speaking at the beginning of the lesson and then carry on speaking. I think they've got to you've got to step back.
Mm-hmm. And not be afraid of silence, because it might take the students a while. Take a while in a long course to get used to that, like doing task-based learning lessons, and so having that autonomy. But also in each lesson, perhaps there's loads of silence at the beginning of the task stage, but that's because they're creating ideas and they're thinking about it before they go and share it. So we have to, when we step back, be okay with that silence at the beginning of the task stage, definitely. Okay, so what are the steps to a task stage? Well, first, of course, we create groups, or rightly, as Josh said, maybe we're creating pairs. It really depends on the task there. And then we are observing the student interaction and taking notes on the emergent language. And this is important for the next stage, which is the language focus. We are being available for clarification and giving help when asked. So I remember doing this task last summer in London, and one of the students was looking up the weather. So we said, okay, so the picnic is taking place tomorrow, and then said, okay, let's check the weather so we know what people need to bring to the picnic. And they said, oh, Miss Kathy, but tomorrow it's raining. And I was like, oh, right, no, okay. And what about the day after? No, the day after it's raining too. And I was like, okay, what are we going to do? And one of the students kind of said to me, okay, well, we need a, and I was like, okay, like a tent. We need a tent or something to cover us, like a gazebo. I said, okay, find a photo of a gazebo so everybody understands what we're talking about. And here I was giving them the help they needed, because they needed to find this language, and it made it really real, this communication. In the same lesson, you might get, for example, someone says, okay, let's take pineapple pizza. Now, as we all know, most Italian students will disagree
Shock
with
horror.
that quite strongly. And so if someone says, okay, let's take pineapple students, and student B says, no, I hate pineapple pizza. So here as a teacher, we can say, okay, that's nice. Here, what I saw was a bit of disagreement. Okay. So they're showing these communicative competencies that we're speaking about last lesson. Okay, disagreement, that's great. They're communicating with each other. But now what we need is that language to make a suggestion. And so we say to student B, okay, say, why don't we? Okay, why don't we take pineapple pizza and margaritas? Why don't we have other food available too? And here we're being that resource and giving them the language that they need to be able to communicate with each other. We are, of course, looking at an A1 level task. And so already they're saying, I hate pineapple pizza is a fantastic way of showing disagreement. But if we were to do a similar task with a B1 level, which is like intermediate level, we'd expect something a bit more complex from them. And they might say something like, I'm not sure all our guests will like pineapple pizza.
Yeah, I'm not
Or,
keen on it.
yeah, exactly. And so
Like
it's still
something.
disagreement, but it's a lot more complex language at a different level. And the final really important thing that we're doing is being the timekeeper, because when the students really get into one of these tasks, they tend to get really carried away with it. But we're constrained by the length of the lesson, and so sometimes it's helpful to break up the task, and we say, okay, spend 5 minutes making your list, spend 5 minutes doing some research about the weather or the place where you want to have your picnic, and then spend 10 minutes summarizing or reporting back that information to your group and making some final decisions before the presentation.
Yeah, I think it's really important to sort of see this, even though we talk about the task stage, it's sort of that can be broken up into smaller tasks. And usually, particularly at lower levels, you need to give them a sort of deadline to do this, to do the parts, because giving them too many tasks in one time is gonna, as we know, if you get given a long time to do something, you take a long time to do it. You know, you give them a
Mhm.
short time to do a small task, then it might be much easier. Okay? Not easier, but like you've got to get them to do it much more readily.
Yeah. And when we think about some more complex tasks that we might do with students which have a higher level, some of those might include doing quite a lot of research online. So you might give them a very, very specific time to read alone online. Okay, spend 10 minutes doing some reading or learning on the topic. And then I want you to spend 10 minutes summarizing or reporting that information to the other members of your group. And it's really, really useful to break up that time like that. Okay, so that is the task stage, and now we're moving on to the post-task stage, or the language focus. But first, let's just talk a little bit about this noticing the gap, because students will already be doing this in that task stage. And what we mean when we talk about noticing the gap is our students realizing the difference between their current language abilities and what they need to do the task successfully, or another way to say that is what is their desired language abilities. And so an example of that is a student saying, okay, I want to, they might, demonstrate that they want to make a suggestion, but they don't know how to do that yet. Okay. They can say, I hate pineapple pizza, but they don't know how to make a suggestion in English, which is, why don't we offer something else? And so this is the gap there, for the student. And they're doing that, they're noticing that whilst they're communicating with each other in the task. So how can we help them in noticing this gap? We can do things like pointing out areas for improvement. Areas of improvement could be having a wider vocabulary, communicating better with their classmates by asking more questions. We can ask them to compare their own production with a model. So at the beginning of this task, in that pre-task stage, I gave a very short model. So the teacher, of course, can act as that resource or the model. And we ask the student to compare what the teacher said during the pre-task stage with what they are producing when they present. But that model could also be a recording. For example, if you do a task with a group of students and you think they did this amazing presentation or they did so well in the task, you could record that and you could use that as the model with your students. And a nice thing about having a recording is they can go back and listen to it again. They can go back and watch it again. A model can also be something found on the internet. For example, if the task is write a newspaper article or give a news report, it's very easy for the students to find something very, very similar on the internet, which is authentic, and then compare it with their own production.
You could very easily also, if you watched our webinar on ChatGPT, ChatGPT is great at doing sort of role plays, short scripts, things like that. So if you want, a conversation between two people or three people about organizing a picnic, talking about what they're going to bring, and making suggestions about activities to do, a prompt like that, for, containing, I don't know, three responses from each person, three turns from each person, it would give you that. So those sort of models can be done. And then, whether you want to do it as a recording before the lesson or you just get some students to act it out, those sort of things too. Chat GPT can be really tailored role play to do.
Yeah, it's a fantastic, fantastic tool for teachers. And as Josh said, we did hold a webinar on the correct prompts to use in order to get these types of things out of ChatGPT. So do go and have a look at that. And the other way that we can, help students to notice this gap is through reflection activities and reflecting on their own performance. So we can do this through getting them to keep a diary. And in that diary, they might write down something that they found difficult or something that they learned from doing the task. We can get them to assess their own production. And again, this might be something they do after each task-based learning lesson. That could be kind of how many stars they give each other out of 5. It could be an emoji. So how do they feel from doing that particular task? And they could use an emoji there. Or something which I use a lot after a task-based lesson is particularly nice because the students all share their reflections with each other. It's very easy, a post-it note comment after class. So every student writes how they feel or what was difficult or what they learned on a post-it note, and they put it on the wall. And before they leave, they take a different post-it note. So they're reading each other's comments before they leave, but they're also writing down their own feelings about the task.
Great feedback as well to the teacher.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so now we're moving on to the post-task stage. And so here, as we can see, we have the teacher interacting with all of the students at the same time, but then also the students interacting with each other because they have to listen to each other and they have to comment on each other's work as well. And so this is where we kind of get that more traditional language focus in the task-based learning lesson. And what are we doing here? We're encouraging the students to listen to each other if they're giving presentations, because they can also learn from each other and they're getting that listening practice. We point out areas for improvement, and we're still challenging them to correct and improve, of course. And we're showing them some errors that were made and giving them clarification on that. So in this post-task stage, in the task, we were taking some notes, or we were listening to their emergent language, and perhaps there we picked up on some mistakes or some improvements that could be made. At this stage, of course, we're talking about this A1 stage. That might be something like pronunciation of those words. If you think about Italian, I'm very used to working with Italian students. That could be something like them saying like fruit instead of fruit. And so we're focusing on the correct pronunciation there. It might be talking about quantifiers, so taking some cheese instead of a cheese. And we can put up some sentences or some phrases on the whiteboard or the blackboard, and we get the students to correct them themselves. It's also really important at this point to highlight the great language that they were using during the task. And this is this kind of positive reinforcement of stuff that they're doing well. And if you write on the board, wow, I heard this phrase, someone said, I'm not keen on pineapple pizza, they're going to be like, oh, who said that? Or I didn't say that, but I want something I said on the whiteboard. I want my teacher to notice the language I'm using. And so also does challenge them to try and use something a bit more challenging, because they want the teacher to notice what language they're using. Also, it gives the student examples of great language, the other students, of course. Then we are asking the students to give their report or give their presentation. In this case, the students are all kind of presenting an event, which is a picnic, to the rest of the students. And here it's really important that we facilitate this active listening. And we can facilitate active listening, which is making sure the students are listening to each other, by giving them a little mini task that might be ask the presenters a question about their event after they've presented it, or tell me which event you like best. Tell me which event you would like to go to. So this ensures that they're all listening to each of the presentations.
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
really important that if you don't give the students a task to do after they're sort of playing a passive role, they just they just zone out. You know, they'll think, okay, I've presented, I can sort of zone out for a while. Okay, but if you know, now you're going to have a vote on which one is the best, or they'd like to attend, or which two, or you know what the pros and cons of each one is, then it really gets them involved and they have a motive to pay attention to their classmates.
yeah, exactly. And it also gives purpose to those presentations, which is so important.
Exactly. I mean, you know, if you realize people are going to be commenting on your one, then you're going to do a bit better. So you're going to try a bit harder.
And then here's where this reflection comes in, however it might be that you want to do it, be it post-it notes, be it a kind of diary that they're keeping themselves. And we're encouraging that self-reflection so that they're thinking about how they're improving and what they want to improve and the direction in which they want to improve. And a lot of this comes under kind of developing those metacognitive skills. So, okay, what did I do well? And what do I want to do better next time? So during your post-task stage, perhaps this is what your whiteboard or blackboard could look like. So here where we've got those green ticks there, we have shown some mistakes that were heard, and we've got the students to correct them before they do their presentations. We have introduced some new vocabulary that you realized that they needed whilst you were going around and hearing them do their tasks, because they're talking about types of snacks. Well, in English, we say savory and sweet snacks. So we introduced this new word to them. And we've put this star here to show, wow, this was some really nice language that I heard you guys using when you were communicating with each other. Okay, you were inviting other people to talk in your group. You were involving everybody in your group to talk by asking them a question. What's your idea? So this is the positive reinforcement of the language that they're using. And then here we are making sure that they're doing this active listening by giving them this phrase that they have to fill in after they've listened to all the presentations. I'd like to go to Josh's picnic because he's providing pineapple pizza.
That sentence I've never heard before.
Okay, so just to kind of sum up the end of this, we're just kind of coming towards the end of this this session here on the different stages of the task-based learning lesson. We have a couple of questions for you. What is the purpose of a model in the pre-task stage? If that model is something recorded, something that you've taken from ChatGPT, or perhaps the model given by the teacher.
Feel
So
free to
if you
put
do want to
your
get
answers
involved,
in the chat.
sorry, go on, Josh.
Sorry, keep. I encourage people to put their answers in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just keep going through the questions, but do write your answers into the chat. Do get involved with it. In what ways can we challenge students to go outside of their comfort zone with the language? So this is the big part of the challenge. How are we challenging our students to do more than the bare minimum in a task, you know? What are the benefits of highlighting this great language heard by the teacher? The great language used in the task stage. So why do we highlight that in the post-task stage?
Fatima's right. Yeah, I always provide the best wine and cheese.
What do you say?
In my Fatima said Josh always provides the best wine and cheese at his picnic. Yeah. So she must have been to one of mine before. Stefania says the model helps them be more correct and build up their confidence. I think that's for sure, yeah.
Right, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's hard to give them, do we expect them to know all this stuff beforehand and we're just getting them to repeat it? No, of course we're going to give them the tools they need to do the task. Victoria says be a source and give clear instructions for the purpose. Yeah. A few people coming in here. I don't know if I'll get to read them all, but yeah, Ramya says to engage them with the students. This is for the purpose of the pre-task. Okay, so they can actively participate with other students. Okay. Anna says shows how a task is supposed to be completed. Okay, good with low-level classes, which is right, so that they can, they might not know anything but one way of saying something. Once you get into B1, B2, they might have a few alternatives,
Mhm.
for suggestions or offers and things like this. Okay? But yeah, very clear. Okay. Let us know what you think of the other, the what ways can we challenge students, and also what the benefits of highlighting the language. Monica says the model makes them clear what they have to do. Okay. Fatima says motivating them to go deeper, feeling more confident in themselves. Okay.
Nice. We're getting onto the challenge here, definitely.
Yep. Renata says highlight great language helps students to increase confidence. Victoria says in response to number two, asking them questions, trying to share ideas with other students. Okay. And
Yeah, and there is that element of competition in a classroom, and we can play off that in order to challenge them and to motivate them.
yeah, and Chantal says the model's really useful for weak students. Yeah.
Yeah.
Low level, weak students. Yeah, I think it makes them more confident in the sense that they've heard something, they can use that. They put it up on the board if you need to. Stefania
Stefania
says,
has
sorry, go on.
we have a question, a really great question here about students becoming too noisy. And it's nice to assign roles in a group. So okay, who's going to be the question controller to ensure all of the students are contributing in a group? Who's going to be time on top of time management? And so they're ensuring that they're going to finish the task in time. And with these roles in each group, you can also say, okay, who's going to be in control of the volume of each group? And so put the responsibility onto them. But I think we could, talk a lot about assigning roles in different groups, in giving students that responsibility and all the benefits of that. And we could do a whole session on that and how useful that is.
Yeah, I think it might be time for a webinar on classroom management and interactive methods, things like that. Yeah, sure.
Great. So we've got some lovely answers there. Let's move on to the final question that we have here for this session. And this is about that like reflection activities. So what is one self-reflection activity you can do with students that will encourage them to think about their own performance and learning path? We made a couple of examples, but perhaps you've got some other ideas as well.
Let us know in the chat. People typing, I'm sure, at the moment. Let's wait for them to finish. While we're waiting for people to finish, I'll just remind people that a lot of the points we made in this webinar go back to other webinars we've done. Okay, so we've talked about interactive methods. So, for example, interactive patterns, pair work, group work, things like this, error correction. So I will tell you in a little moment how you can find our recorded webinars. But if you're curious about any of these things we've talked about, I think a lot of our webinars tie in with task-based learning because this is sort of the MLA's method of teaching. Okay? Not only our method, but the one that we use. Stefania says the students could vote for the best idea of the classroom and give reasons why. Okay? Yep, that was a great one. Ask questions. Was the activity difficult? Why? Yep.
We have a 3-2-1 activity, which is nice. 3 things they struggled with, 2 things they felt confident using, and 1 thing they would like to learn how to say. Nice.
Oh yeah, missed that one.
I think a diary can be a hard thing to introduce in the beginning, but it's a really nice way for students to keep a record of how they feel after each task, and they will begin to go back and have a look at what they were saying at the beginning of the school year and how that changes at the towards the end of the school year. And that's very empowering for students to have that record of how their feelings have changed, or what was difficult at the beginning of the year and what was difficult at the end of the year. Okay, nice. Well, thank you for all of those responses there and getting involved. That does bring us to the end of this webinar here.
I'll just let you know, we had a few questions about where you can see the recordings. If you go to YouTube and you type in MLA World, all one word, not just MLA, but MLA World, it should bring you to our page. You'll see the logo. And you can see on there that we add all the webinars. So you've got a couple of years of webinars there, of weekly webinars. I don't know if last week's is on there yet, but it will be soon, as will this one. Okay, so have a look at the different topics. Some of them are about certain topics, Christmas, back to school, things like that. Some of them are more methodical, talking about interactive patterns and active learning and things like this. So
yeah, there's a couple of links in the handout that's going out with this session. There's a link to a couple of the webinars in there that we've done in the past.
Okay, so yeah, if you see that, you can go to the main playlist page as well. Okay, just to repeat, if you signed up for this webinar only individually, so not part of the TEFL training course, we will send you a certificate of participation and a webinar handout in the next couple of days. So feel free to email us there. However, if you are part of our TEFL training course, you won't have received a certificate of participation last week because as this is on the Sophia platform, you will be receiving a certificate for all of the course. So whether that's includes just these 2 webinars, we are making a choice. Remember that this TEFL course may include the possibility to watch to observe a lesson. Okay? However, due to the certain number, we can only offer it for a certain number of people. So people that manage to get you into a class, that you'll receive it, including that at the very end. Everyone else will get will send you out a certificate of participation for the 8 hours of these 2 webinars. Okay, so just let us know if you're missing any of them. Give it a few days, however. Okay, as we always do, you'll get a handout containing all the information of from this webinar. So don't worry, you can watch the video again when it gets uploaded, but you will receive all the information here, and Kathy's prepared it with a lot of links, things too. If you're in the training course, the next session for the people selected to observe will be a preparation for the observation. Okay, you won't need to sign up for this on the events page. You'll receive an email invite for it. So watch out for that. If not, we will be running another course soon. So, I'm afraid we can only get a certain number of people in there. But anyway, if you just watch our webinars regularly, then the next one will be in 2 weeks. The next public one, we're going to be talking about doing debates in the classroom, okay, with a couple of people who have done them quite a bit. And so feel free to join us there. I think it's going to be an interesting webinar for sure. Okay. Thanks to everyone, and I hope you enjoy these 2 series of webinars on task-based learning. And I hope to see you again soon. Okay.
Thank you for coming, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks to you, Kathy, for preparing this series.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay. Bye, everyone.